Welcome to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast with Corey Shapiro. Quote, be the change you want to see. It's a paraphrase of a famous saying by Gandhi. Divorce news reminded me of this saying because I read about Kim Kardashian resolving her divorce and getting $200,000 a month in child support, or about $2.4 million a year. Something was interesting to me about that because Kim's a billionaire, her husband's a billionaire, and why are they fighting over money, which doesn't seem to be so much for them? So let me put this in perspective, this money in perspective. Let's say I'm a billionaire, but maybe I only have $250 million, and that's only in cash. That's all I'm liquid. I have the worst investment advisor ever, but I keep them. They only get me 1% return, but it's super safe. So out of my $250 million, every year I get a check for $2,500,000, or about $200,000 a month doing nothing. Okay, now put this into the real world. Let's say I'm a diligent saver. I have a good job. I've been earning some money. And over the years, I saved $100,000. If I use that worst financial advisor, but they're super safe, and I get a 1% return on my money, 1% of $100,000 is $1,000 per year. I'll get that check, or $83 a month. So it seemed to be that they're fighting over $83 a month, having this messy public divorce. Could there have been a better way? Now, Kim hired a very experienced attorney. Her name is Laura Wasser. She's a second-generation divorce attorney in California. Her father and her represent high net worth individuals, celebrities, athletes, but they're litigators. They use court to move cases forward. If you go to her website, at least as of today, in her bio, there's no mention of mediation. There's no mention of collaborative divorce, which is a non-court approach to divorce. No, she uses court if negotiation fails. And I believe Laura believes in negotiated agreements. I mean, she wrote a book about it. The book is titled, "It Doesn't Have to Be That Way: How to Divorce Without Destroying Your Family or Bankrupting Yourself." So she believes in getting a divorce without losing your mind, but she has clients who have spouses who may have lost their mind, and even someone as experienced and as caring as she is cannot help someone when their spouse has lost their mind, cannot stop a messy divorce. What could have done or been done differently? Well, maybe leaving even that $200,000 on the table. Maybe that's it. Does it matter? I don't think so in the long term. I don't really know the facts of the case, but sometimes it's better off to leave things on the table than rather having a messy public divorce. All right, question. My spouse and I have been living together for some time. I want to move out. We share 2 children, one in college, one going to college soon. How do people handle daily expenses for kids once living apart? This is a good question. You know, staying together is difficult when the marriage is dead. It's not healthy. It could be toxic. Moving on, getting your own place, that's going to be a big adjustment. And most people are moving into a new dimension and may not have lived alone ever or for years. And it's scary. And besides all the logistical issues of getting your own apartment and all the expense involved, now you have to worry about how do we pay for everything on top of all these additional expenses you're going to have for this new home. There's 2 approaches. One is a collaborative approach, which is being creative, not necessarily using the law, but thinking things through smartly. And then there's the competitive approach where we really are influenced with the law, because if we know if things go south, A judge is going to decide things, and the judge decides things generally based on the law. So in the collaborative approach, we usually do a needs-based analysis or a budget approach. You're going to figure out the expenses for the children, and you might have an account, a joint account, where you just add to that account each month. You can do it pro rata. So if you make about the same, it could be 50-50. And if there's additional expenses that were not budgeted for, you could have a true up on a monthly or quarterly basis. And of course, doing this takes trust. It takes good faith. On the other hand, if you are co-parenting effectively and being collaborative, maybe working together if you have some struggles with a parenting coordinator or with other professionals, it can be done. If, on the other hand, you have a competitive situation where the other person doesn't want to do anything like this, you're going to basically use the income sharing approach. That's what the court does. They have these statutes, and they're just going to plug in numbers, and each state is a little different. The issue there is parenting time influences who pays or who receives child support. And for some reason in New York, the law is if you have equal time, the parent who makes more pays child support. I don't necessarily agree with that law, but that's the law as it stands now, which may evolve. And every state's a little different. If you do the income sharing approach, in addition to basic expenses, because the child support is basically dealing with shelter, food, basic expensive clothing, they have add-on expenses. And then the add-on expenses you share pro rata, like that first option, but the add-on expenses are limited. It could be a little different in each jurisdiction. In New York, it's unreimbursed medical, it's education, extracurricular activities, summer camp, stuff like that. All right, positive perspective. Maybe you don't want a divorce, but your spouse does. You've been married for a while. Maybe you have a family. Maybe you both had some fights over the years, as any marriage probably does. Maybe there have been talk of divorce, but nothing serious. But now the other spouse really wants a divorce and getting really serious, and maybe even hire an attorney. And they sent you maybe a letter, and you're just not responding. You're grieving, and you're wondering if your spouse is really going to go through with it. How can they throw away decades of a marriage, a family, so late in life? And you're concerned. But there comes a point where if the threats continue to go to court, you may have to do something. And if you are going to do something, here are 5 things to think about. The divorce itself is not really the issue. That's a legal event. In most states, you have no fault divorce. And if someone wants a divorce, they can get a divorce. But what is more important is resolving all the issues in a divorce. If you have children, that's resolving the parenting issues. You have the spousal and child support issues, if there's a dependent spouse and children and cash flow concerns. You then have dividing property. And you also have sharing of litigation costs, attorney fees, expert fees. And you don't necessarily need to go to court or even need to get a divorce to deal with those issues. Instead, you could enter into an agreement. The agreement bides time, because there have been couples who've entered into an agreement and then reconciled. There's 2 agreements to consider. There is the postnup or postnuptial agreement, which is like a prenuptial agreement, but you enter it into it during the marriage. And then there's a separation agreement. You can basically put the same things in both of those agreements. It seems the difference to me is that historically, the separation agreement could have been used to convert to a divorce without having any grounds. So back in the day, you used to have grounds for divorce, like adultery, cruel and inhumane treatment. You don't have to do that anymore. You just have no fault divorce. So you could enter into a separation agreement now and then still get a divorce in a month based on no fault. I think in the past, you had to live a certain amount of time under the separation agreement to get divorced. So you can enter into these agreements, you can resolve these substantive issues, and you can see what happens. And maybe you'll reconcile, maybe you won't. But if things actually go to a divorce, then at least you resolved these complicated issues, which really could be emotionally troubling for people. All right, we're going to close here. Remember, this podcast is for informational purposes only. Please consult with your attorney before acting on the information contained in this podcast. Until next time, be creative, not reactive.